why effective communication is of the utmost importance in a relationship, any relationship. So from my experience, I find the prerequisites to being able to effectively communicate, one would be have the unconditional commitment to love, including yourself. And secondly, the willingness to work through, the difficult times, especially in relationships and including the relationship with yourself. I think a lot of us can relate to that. I'm seeking to understand and I'm seeking to be understood. I want that fulfillment of either having given value to somebody else's life, emotionally especially, or somebody, having, been as benevolent to give a gift to me of, valuable conversation and the emotional connection. That's of the most priceless value, to have that connection. If I feel something and I feel a certain way, and I myself may not understand it, and I speak out about it, like, hey, that kind of made me feel uneasy or, ambivalent. I'd like some more details. Maybe I can understand why it is I'm feeling this way. And instead of blaming somebody for something, instead of, like I said, having the unconditional love, not seeking to prove someone wrong, because it's just so ineffective. Who gives a shit at this point in life? Somebody thinks we're wrong somewhere. Somebody thinks we're right somewhere. May just be us, but who gives a crap? And the willingness to work through, anything. And that's part of the unconditionally loving yourself kind of thing. So you have that commitment. It's a commitment to love yourself and to love everyone else around you, irregardless of liking them. You realize that everyone's a reflection of you. And if they're reflecting something you dislike, really take that in, understand why that is, and be willing to work through it. Being, having that motivation to work through any hurdle, you are going to only gradually grow stronger and stronger within your own self and within that relationship. So really trying to conceive that perspective of the other person. Take yourself out of that human bias and put yourself in the bird's eye view. I mean, it is such a spectacular view to have, because then you're not so bound or attached to any one perspective. Yes, you have your own human biases, your personality, but you can, conceptualize and imagine and empathize at the very least how the other feels, how the other is experiencing it. And then you have a grounds, because you felt that or understand that within your own self, on how to proceed from there, how to improve that relationship from there. And, coupling that with unconditional love, I mean, it can only go uphill. Effective communication is in a relationship. I mean, that's how you teach the other, who you are in relation to them, not in comparison, but in relation, who am I? And, when you're trying to work on building that, you have to communicate, obviously, whether it be body language, whether it be verbally, whether it be, there's so many different forms of communication. Maybe think of it like glasses. I'd like to try somebody else's glasses on so I can empathize and understand what they're dealing with, because it's difficult to imagine with very little detail. If you don't have a lot of intimate discussions and, not expressing your emotions, energy and motion, that's what we are, energy and motion. And so if we're not expressing that, how are we really showing them who we are? And obviously it'd be frustrating, because then at some point you're expecting someone to know who you are, and that is just so frustrating, having been in a position before where not being able to communicate very well. When you expect somebody to know you so thoroughly, but yet you've not, detailed who you are, you've not shared those intimate moments or emotions or, thoughts of yours for someone to be understanding and empathize and really be able to conceptualize, who are you? Most people are so stuck in their own mind that they have these visions of who these people are, but you're not going to help them understand you better unless you understand you better. And, you know, again, be unconditionally loving to yourself to understand yourself better, and be willing to work through anything and everything. Like, there's nothing you can't get through at all. I mean, it's this world, the physical world is merely the metaphor for all the energy and motion. Effective communication is like painting a picture for the other person. What do you want them to see? What details do you want them to focus on? What aspects or dynamics do you want to convey to them, and I guess immerse them in your world? How? You know, think of how you would paint that picture verbally, body language, write it down, draw it out, paint it out. I mean, there's a myriad of ways. I mean, the primary, obviously, humans tend to default to is verbal communication, but you know, we'll just speak on that aspect for now. You can sub in whatever form your preference is, but you know, verbal communication, how would you paint somebody that picture? And you know, what words, what is it that, you know, that they need to hear to, you know, for you to, I guess, convey a perspective where you can be understood. So say you make an attempt and you know, innately you can kind of sense that when you're not being understood in the way that you intended. So say that's the feeling you just got when you tried to communicate who you are. So maybe when somebody reacts with that body language that makes you uneasy, that they didn't understand, instead consider like, okay, you know, instead of reacting, because, you know, your intuition will probably pick up on it, but may not be able to clearly understand it if you're still working on the communication. So instead of reacting to, you know, that uncomfortable feeling of being misunderstood, maybe ask some questions. Be like, I kind of feel a little bit of tension maybe. What was it that I said that may have struck you in a way that wasn't what I intended? Because I don't think I may have communicated myself clearly. Can you describe to me what it is that, you know, you feel I just told you? And kind of ask them to give you the picture that you just painted back, to see how it is. You know how you said it, you know what you were imagining, what you conveyed, but now when you're getting it back, you realize it's trying the same pair of glasses on almost. So you're seeing the same perspective, and you're realizing how each of you has a different filter in which it's seen through. When you can sense that your perspective is not being understood and you're feeling that sense of misunderstanding, which obviously nobody likes to feel. I know that's just a yuck feeling to sense. Think of, you know, when they give you that, regurgitate that perspective that you painted for them. Pick out those parts of it. It's like, okay, I didn't mean for that. I didn't mean for that. Like, that wasn't how I wanted to convey that aspect. So let me go through, you know, sometimes it's something as simple as just using different synonyms. Maybe it was the attitude in which it was conveyed. Like, there's so many dynamics that are very subtle in communication that can affect somebody's reaction. You're looking for a response, not necessarily reaction. We each have our own individual language, so it's like, what, you know, is it like more a change of words, a change of attitude, a change of sentence structure? I mean, very, very simple, subtle things that people pick up on and react to because they may have had some trauma or some wound in relation to something you have said. So having not worked through that, that would obviously cause a reaction. You know, you probably wouldn't get a very good response of someone. So to kind of prevent that and curtail any of that when it comes to communicating, you know, remember, you're always seeking to unconditionally love and you're willing to work through anything. So, okay, how do I go about getting you to understand at least what I'm seeing as far as my perspective? You don't have to agree. You know, that's irrelevant. We're seeking just to be, you know, to be understanding back and forth. You know, no one's right, no one's wrong. That's not what communication's about. It's that like, okay, the intimate exchange of the mind, merging the two for the one, or how many ever people are involved, whatever. But it's like merging from this physical world and feeling, I guess just obliterating that sense of loneliness or detachment, or, the distance that you may feel from people in general. Like, I've struggled a lot with, like, social anxiety. So for me, a lot of it was just communicating. I mean, if I felt awkward, I'd straight up tell somebody now. Like, I just feel a little bit awkward. I mean, I don't really know you guys. I'm not really sure, how to communicate just yet. I'm learning. I just be open about it. I mean, what are they gonna do? I mean, at least told them, kind of thing. Clearly communicating. If that's how I'm feeling, I said it in, I'll say it in the nicest way I can. Like, obviously, the loving part. Don't seek to be like, okay, you guys are weird, because you feel awkward. No, you feel awkward because you feel awkward. I feel awkward because I feel awkward. Nobody's to blame. So I guess, like, obliterating that blame game thing is, like, the most, ineffective thing you can do when you're trying to communicate with somebody. It's just the back and forth. Well, you said this or you said that. No, he said, she said. We don't do that shit. Just not helpful. Communication, to me, that is where intimacy is built, a bond is built, trust, friendship. That's how you continue the unconditional love. You explain these very intricate details of, how you understand the world, and that opens up somebody else's perspective. It broadens somebody else's, filters in a way where and when you're doing it with unconditional love, you're obviously not doing it to hurt. So it's just intended to be helpful growth. And instead of, like, making, accusatory statements or, vindictive comments, anything of the sort. I mean, I'm sure everyone doesn't need an explanation of the horrible things that have been said back and forth in relationships with one another. I mean, it's, atrocious, some of the things we'll say to people we've loved at some point in our life because we are hurt so bad. So just because we're hurting, it doesn't help to hurt somebody else. What does help is effective communication. So the effective communication, first on working, loving yourself, so you can love others more thoroughly, even if you don't like them, even if you don't agree with them. Learning to, understand the perspective of, you need to be a murderer or whatever, you don't have to agree. But it is helpful to understand. It's helpful to understand because it's helpful to understand that pattern. That pattern is something, obviously, that, humans can tend to have in common. So whenever that pattern reappears, it is helpful because you will have that understanding. So, I don't agree with horrible things such as murder. I'm vegan. But to understand that perspective, for example, may help somebody, curtail that behavior early on, when somebody's expressing distress in childhood, and catching the pattern before it manifests in such a way where it's so destructive that, it infects others' lives. I have found that for me in my healing, I mean, it's an ongoing process, but it's simply like communicating has been like literally like a lifesaver for me. Like communicating my boundaries, communicating who I am, communicating what I want in life, communicating who and what, I choose to be has been like pivotal. But as a child, I didn't have those developed skills, and having the traumatizing experiences, I've allowed myself to develop those skills for the sake of survival. The survival emotionally, physically. It was crucial. I wouldn't know what to do if I had not, I gave myself to the hands of so many doctors that I had so many abusive experiences with, that if I hadn't learned those skills, who knows what the end of that result would have been. Like, I mean, it got as far as, like I said, the electroshock treatment. I mean, that's pretty abusive. Can't remember your name after they shock the shit out of you. Might as well give you a lobotomy, right? But either way, the effective communication definitely, you know, it's a lifesaver. It helps mend wounds. Your own, it helps mend them in relationships. When you're willing to be vulnerable and open with somebody,